Hello, I am Bree, and welcome to another edition of what is becoming a podcast. Last time I spoke about the experience of uncoupling, and there's some questions that a number of women asked around what I did post uncoupling, and so I wanted to speak into that today and share with you in more detail some things that can be helpful if you're navigating the ending of a relationship, irrespective of someone else's involvement around the conversation of uncoupling, but more how do you care for yourself and how do you come back into balance with yourself as a single person? Because the grief around the relationship can be very real, the loss, the sadness, the readjustment, and the things that I did that really helped me to reach the place that I'm in now, just feeling, yeah, deeply whole and satisfied in my singlehood because it's by choice. Hmm. So, the first thing I want to mention is the concept of giving ourselves space, time and space to be with whatever is relevant for us around the relationship. So that could mean reflecting on the things we learned from that relationship. It could mean reflecting on the gifts and the things we loved. It could mean reflecting on the things we'd like to do differently as well. But that is part of the process. And that is going to take as long as it takes. Could be just do some journaling one time, or it could be over a period of weeks or months, even. And that is something that I did as part of the uncoupling. But if you were not doing that process with someone else, you can certainly do it on your own. When it came to really coming back into my own fullness, there's something that I wanted to share, a concept called a masculine cleanse, or if you are a man, that it would be a feminine cleanse. And this is a concept that my teacher, John Wineland, brought up or into my awareness quite a number of years ago. And I really want to share it because it's a really powerful concept if you are wanting to reset yourself in relation to the opposite sex, to come back into healthy connection with yourself, but also to prepare for the next relationship. And so I guess that's what this conversation is about. How do we come back into ourselves to prepare for the next relationship? Because the biggest mistake most people make is ending one relationship and going straight into another, at least in my opinion and my observation. And so making time to pause, reflect, reset, regroup, and then decide what comes next is what this conversation is about. So the masculine cleanse for me as a woman who's feminine leaning, the concept of a masculine cleanse or vice versa for men, a feminine cleanse, is creating a period of time, a container. If you've watched the uncoupling video, it's the same concept of a container, but the creating a space where we have, for a period of time, we are intentionally not engaging with the opposite sex because we want to look at our deeper patterns in relation to them. And I didn't actually decide logically that I was going to do a masculine cleanse, but looking back, I've realized that that is actually what I did. So the way that John talks about it is to create minimum 6 months, because around the 3 month mark is just when you're starting to hit the real stuff. So 3 months is not generally enough. I believe I did it for probably around 5 because I didn't actually set out with the intention, but I'm sharing it with you with the idea that maybe you will do it with that high level intention that I want to set a 6 month or more container for myself to go through a cleanse of this nature. And so you think about if you do a detox of some kind, you go off sugar, you go off coffee, it's the same. It's the concept of being really aware of how we do these things habitually, how we engage with the other sex, because we need it, we want something met, we want a need met within ourselves, we want to fill ourselves up, we want to engage sexually, or we want to feel important, or we want to feel loved, or we want to feel intimacy, and all these things, except for sex, we can get in other avenues. We can either give it to ourselves or we can get it with other people in our lives. And so learning our patterns around how we do this reflexively instead of intentionally is really a beautiful intention of this kind of a cleanse. Because when we come out of relationship, it is a beautiful time to pause and go, well, what do I really want? And who do I need to be to become the version of myself that that person that I want is going to want in return? The mirror. Because so often people think, oh, I want this thing, but they don't want to match to it. And so for me, going through this process of, creating space for myself to not interact with men in any kind of way for a period of time was deeply healing for a number of reasons. And so if I go back to what this could look like in this cleanse, it could mean that you reach out to people who are in your world who are friends or opposite gender that you have regular connection with, and you let them know that you're going into a container with yourself to look at your relationship to the masculine or the feminine. And you let them know that you're not going to be having so much contact, or if you are having contact, that it's going to be quite platonic, because this is where we start to see the parts of us that play out even in friendships. It means going to the shops. If you notice that you want to flirt with the shop assistant or someone in the shopping center who is the opposite sex, you hold that energy back in yourself. You don't engage. And you notice the patterns that it brings up in you. It means not going on dating sites, not going on dates, just not interacting in any kind of sexual, flirty kind of capacity with the opposite sex for the period of time that you have set. This probably sounds like a really confronting idea. And yes, it's not easy. And for me, what I did was I set the intention that I was going to share my time and my energy with women as a woman. And that was what my cleanse looked like. I wasn't dating, I wasn't going out and interacting with people. I only went to workshops and events. When I was not working as a facilitator, I only went to workshops and events that were with women and shared spaces with women, whether they were social, connection based, or erotic spaces. I only ever shared that with women because that felt appropriate for me to really, cleanse this relationship with the masculine for a period of time. And so for men, what this could look like is you spend time with your brothers. If you have men's group or a brotherhood, you focus on them. You do social activities with them. You don't do it with your female friends. You don't go to places, social environments like pubs and things where there's other women. Or if you go, you keep your energy really contained. So you're not eyeing someone off across the bar. You're not like asking for their number. You're not talking to them. So it's like you're in a bubble. Doesn't mean you be rude. If someone engages with you, you can just be like, yeah, no thanks. You can be really polite, but you're not playing into the hooks of erotic flirting energy that we tend to slip into with the opposite sex. And so again, the beauty of this is we really start to notice where we reach for the other or where we want their attention. So it is like a beautiful detox, reset, cleanse to go, oh, so how do I really want to be in relationship with this opposite gender or, same gender, I guess, if you are someone who was that way inclined as well. It's the same concept. So creating this container for myself, even though I didn't put a time frame on it, I did create an intention around it. Felt really nourishing because I knew I wasn't going to be leaking that energy towards men when I didn't want to be sharing it with them, and I wanted to be giving it to myself. And I also believe men should be spending time with men, women should be spending time with women from a perspective of healthy polarity. We cultivate more of this when we are in our natural space, and then we can come together as men and women and let the differences amplify and ignite us. But if we spend all of our time with the opposite gender, whether it's your partner, your work colleagues, Children don't really count because they're slightly different circumstance. But if you spend all your time with the opposite sex, then we can sometimes get diluted and we can not notice the power or the patterns that play out for us. So second to the idea of this masculine or feminine cleanse, the other thing that I did was really be mindful of tending to my own needs, which meant sexually, through self-touch, through self-pleasure, through self-connection practices. It meant really being aware of giving myself things that I was craving or creating opportunities socially to get them, as opposed to always relying on a partner for those. And so this is a healthy thing around self-sourcing that, again, coming out of relationship, we can start to notice there's a big gap in my life where somebody else was taking up space and I miss all these things. That's a normal part of the process of disentangling the union, particularly if it was for a long enough period of time that you felt deeply connected, anything probably over 9 to 12 months, but every relationship is different. What else do I want to say? I think that it's really important to understand how to self-source our needs in all of these areas and how to lean on our local community or our support network, whether it's women and women's groups or men and men's groups or your exercise buddies or your work colleagues, so that we can start to figure out who we want to be next. And it's in this time that I got clearer on the things that I wanted more of in my next relationship and who I needed to be to show up as that person. So, for example, if you're wanting a new relationship in the future, then doing some of these things can be really, really beautiful so that we're not walking around in the world needy and leaky and grabby, like, I want someone, I need a partner, I'm so lonely. We're really filling our own cup first. And this applies to everyone of all ages and all genders and all sexual denominations. But when we don't have that fullness, we can kind of repel people with our enthusiasm, and it can feel a bit much sometimes, too early, too fast. And so this is why self-sourcing is a really, really beautiful practice to do. And it doesn't mean hiding away in your house and isolating yourself from everyone, by the way. I'm not talking about that extreme. I'm talking about finding the happy balance where you're connecting with your community, your friends, your social network, whatever those things are for you, and you're going back to things that bring you joy that are not just relationship based. From that place, we will often start to meet people more organically. Dating apps are great, they have their value, but a lot of people that I've heard from still find them really, really hard. And I've certainly found the same because they're so, well, I'm not even going to go into that for a lot of reasons. Let's just leave it there. Whereas when we meet someone organically, in a community center, at a local event, and a conversation starts up, there is some kind of a pull there. It doesn't have to be physical attraction, but there's some kind of energetic attraction or curiosity to know that person more. We already know we want that when we meet organically. And that's why people often sort of desire it so much more than being on a dating app and looking at the superficials of a picture or a list of someone's hobbies and trying to figure out if there's a match there. And then you meet in person and there's not any pull. So what I would invite is, and what I've continued to do, is to put myself in places that feel good for me, whether it's social dances, workshops, exercise programs, all these things are places we can meet people who have similar interests. But when we fill our own cup first and then we go to those places, again, we're coming from a healthier place. We're more available for connection. We're not putting excessive pressure on someone else. Hopefully we don't come on so hard and so fast that they're just like, whoa, you're really nice and everything, but just slow down. And so having this space to really prepare before the next relationship is really, really beautiful. So that's self-sourcing. The next thing that I want to mention is potentially a triggering topic for others. And it does link back to the masculine and feminine cleanse, but it's a deeper aspect. and it's intentional celibacy. I don't know if that's the correct word because for me, I wasn't not having sex. I was still having it with myself, but not with anyone else. So that's why I use the word intentional, being intentional about who I share my sexual energy with. And again, I think this applies to a lot of people. If you're wanting a really high quality relationship, and while you're waiting for that relationship to come along, you're out sleeping with everyone you can just to get your needs met or just because it's fun, then there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. But if you're wanting the kind of relationship that I teach, then that person might have a desire for something more deep and more intentional. And that sometimes means retaining our sexual energy, or again, containing it with ourselves in reverence of what it's going to be like when you're with the next person. And so, from a tantric perspective, when we have sex with someone, a deeper experience happens, particularly biologically for women, but I believe it happens for everyone. There is an element of bonding biologically that happens when we engage in a sexual act, particularly if you do it more than once. And so it's hard for us to sometimes separate our emotions and the sexual experience. Sure, some people say they can do that, but that's not my experience. And most women I talk to don't find it's easy for them. And I certainly have spoken to men who find it hard too. And so you can say it doesn't bother you, but my invitation is, what about the person you want to be in relationship with in the future? Will it bother them? If you really want a high quality, intentional, loving, sacred partnership, how are they going to show up? And can you show up in the same? So think about what that means for you. For me, it means keeping my sexual energy to myself, having spaces where I can explore with people to a certain area, but not sexual penetration, because that is not available outside of a relationship. And that's what I mean by intentional celibacy, containing that within my own body until there's someone I really feel I can share that with, because there is a relationship container that has an intention of longevity, compatibility, those sorts of things. And this might seem old fashioned. It's okay if it's not for you, but it's definitely my truth. And the more women I speak to, the more I find this is naturally what feels good for us. I can't speak for the men. I haven't asked a lot of men this specific topic. So if you're a man, feel free to comment. I'd love to hear what this is like for you. Please be respectful, of course, in your comments. And yet it is something that is becoming more common, that I know a lot of women who are choosing to not have sexual interactions with men outside of relationship because they no longer want that. They want both. And so it's something to just be in self-inquiry about. It's the right thing for me at the moment. That doesn't mean it's the right thing for you, but I'm sharing it because I would like to invite you to reflect on what is the right thing for you. Because again, so often we come out of a relationship and we just go straight onto the dating app, straight onto okay, I'm just going to go and get some sex because I'm lonely, or straight onto who's the next person, or I don't want to be lonely. And all these things stop us from showing up in full intimacy. Intimacy is essentially what I teach and what I do my best to live. And that requires us looking at ourselves and all of these parts that we're talking about. So these are some really interesting conversations which will continue to unfold on social avenues, such as on my social media pages. But I guess I'd like to leave it at this place of invitation for you to reflect. If you are between relationships, or if you know that you want a certain quality of relationship in the future, what are you willing to do to get it? Are you willing to do a cleanse? Are you willing to abstain from sex with other people for a period of time and get to know yourself better, your sexual needs, desires, fantasies? It's not about hiding those things. It's just about being discerning. discernment is what intentional celibacy is about for me, because of the sacredness of the sexual act and what it means for me when I have that and share that with someone. And again, that doesn't need to be your truth, but it is for many people becoming more common. So reflect on, what are you willing to do for the relationship that you want in the future? And what would your future partner be willing to do as well? If you think about them and you make a list of what they're probably doing with the qualities that you desire, can you make yourself a reciprocal list of, this is the things they're doing, this is what they would want in a partner? Am I doing this? If not, those are questions and things to look at in yourself. And that is self-intimacy, self-responsibility, becoming more sovereign in our regalness. Kings and queens are words some people use, but sovereignty is definitely the underwriting theme here, and self-responsibility. So thank you for joining me. I look forward to sharing more things, more episodes with you about all things relationships, sexuality, pleasure, sacred intimacy, and all the things in between. And please leave your comments below. I look forward to hearing from you in the next episode.